All right, so to begin the segment, today Islander 3 comes out. Do buy it. It's brilliant. Loads of good people in it, actually.
Yeah.
As always, loads of people you will have heard of have written articles, and the aesthetic is really good. As always, thank Rory for that. He's done tons and tons of work on it. So if you're interested, do consider buying that. Okay, going to talk a little bit about Egypt now then, because there's been some things that have been in the news, that a new tomb has been discovered.
Well, they found Tutankhamun again.
No. There's just parallels with the Howard Carter 1922 Tutankhamun discovery. There's a few vague parallels with that.
To be fair, the headline does say of his dynasty.
Yeah, it's 18th dynasty.
Okay.
So
how far ago is that?
So we're talking like the 15th, 16th century, 15th century BC, right. 1480 odd BC.
Was that when they were relatively near the peak of their power?
Well, that's a good question. Depends how you measure it. Probably it's the New Kingdom.
Right.
So, I mean, different historians. There's peaks and troughs. Egyptian history is so long that there's peaks and troughs. Some would say that parts of the New Kingdom, you could argue they had sort of golden ages there.
Yes. Well, I mean, by the time you get to Cleopatra and the Romans turn up,
yeah.
they're pretty weak by then, aren't they?
Yeah, they're not even Egyptians really. The Ptolemaic dynasty are Macedonians. They're not even Egyptians. I mean, so I would say, just my personal take, is that the pyramid builders represent the zenith, and that's really early on. They're like the third, fourth dynasty. They're like it's the Old Kingdom. It's really the pyramid.
How far back is that?
You're talking 24th, 25th, 26th century BC.
Okay.
So I get 1,000 years before this. So again,
quite a long time.
Egyptian history is so long.
Do you put any stock into that idea that the Sphinx is even much, much older than that? I mean, like we're talking about like
I think so.
Another 5,000 years earlier.
Probably not that much.
Right.
But maybe.
Because that's a Graham Hancock thing, isn't it? That it's got
Yeah.
water erosion around it and all that kind of stuff.
Yeah. The area, the pit that the Sphinx is in.
Yeah.
People said that the water erosion on the sides of that suggests that it's from a much, much deeper antiquity. I think it's at least fair to say that the Sphinx has been reworked a number of times over the centuries, over the millennia. The original thing.
You usually have a dog face or something.
Well, we don't know. The head doesn't seem to be right, does it? The head seems too small for the rest of the body.
Yes.
That's what a lot of people have said. And most of the Sphinx is sort of natural bedrock. So I think I wasn't going to talk about the Sphinx, but why not? It seems like originally, in the first instance, it was sort of a natural outcropping that probably vaguely looked like a lion or something like that, a dog,
and one
a
day an
jackal or
Egyptian
something.
got bored and thought,
And
why
they-
don't we actually make it look like a lion?
Yeah, and then at some later date, recarved the head into a pharaoh's head and various things. I mean, it wasn't until the 18th or even 19th century they dug it out of the sand.
Really?
Yeah, people did sketches and drawings of it in the 18th century, and it's only like the head sticking out of the sand. But anyway, so this new discovery is what's the pharaoh's name? He's not that important one. His son was much more important.
Don't worry if you don't remember the name. I won't know him anyway.
What is his name? Thutmose II. So I'm probably not.
Thutmose II.
Thutmose II. Now Thutmose III was sort of an important one. Sort of had a relatively long reign and was sort of militarily successful. But this guy didn't rule for very long, and didn't sort of achieve great things. So anyway, it was back in 2022, so a few years ago, when they first discovered his tomb, and it's not even in the Valley of the Kings, it's a few miles away, like 3 miles away from the Valley of the Kings, and there'd been some sort of natural flooding and natural backfill, but it had been either plundered by tomb robbers or just deliberately emptied and moved somewhere else in antiquity. So the parallels with Tutankhamun don't really hold, because the headline about Tutankhamun is it had been unplundered. When Howard Carter broke into it in 1922, famously he looked through and saw shining
There's some
gold,
good loot
and it was
here.
filled with golden artifacts and things. This wasn't.
So Thutmose the second, he's been robbed.
Either robbed, or they think now that possibly they'd made this tomb, they'd realised for whatever reason that it wasn't going to work, or it was going to keep getting flooded naturally, so they sort of abandoned it, made him another chambered tomb complex, and moved everything there. Because actually some of the links I was going to talk about much later were that in this got in the news about a week ago, but in the last day or so, they're saying they found another portion to it.
Okay. Has that got loot?
No.
No, right. Okay.
Because they found his body, or what they thought was his body, his mummy, back in the late 19th century, in like 1881 or something.
Thutmose the second.
Yeah.
Right.
They'd found a mummy, and the archaeologists thought that was this Thutmose II. And now they think probably it wasn't. It was someone else.
Yeah, but if you found a mummy, I mean they're not in the best nick, are they? So how, when you look at it, what makes you think, yeah, that's Thutmose II?
Well, it's the job of the archaeologist, isn't it? That you find them, they'll usually have inscriptions. There might be hieroglyphs on the wall, or they might have things actually on them which suggest it's from this dynasty, or
Okay.
it might even just say, you might even find papyrus or hieroglyphs on the wall that explicitly say, this is the tomb of da-da-da-da-da.
Oh, okay, right. Fair
So,
enough. Yeah, that's fairly conclusive there.
But sometimes you might get a tiny fragment of something. In fact, that's why they think this one was either the tomb or the abandoned tomb of Thutmose II, because they found relatively small artifacts which say it was. So that's quite good evidence, but still.
Well, I'm convinced. So what's interesting about this then?
Well, just that even this, as relatively empty as it was, is still very, very rare. It's very, very rare for archaeologists to find. See, look, that's what they thought, and some people still do think is the mummy of Thutmose II. Yeah, it's still very rare to find any sort of burial chambers that have been closed since antiquity. So, although it wasn't full of golden things or a mummy, it's still worthy of note. Still absolutely worthy of note.
Was there some common loot items in there?
There was some small things, yeah.
Right, okay.
And some things on the wall, some plaster on the ceiling where it shows stars. So you know it's almost certainly, well, it is a burial chamber of some type. But by the 18th dynasty, you're a long way off of sort of giant burial complexes,
like the pyramid.
or pyramids, yeah. Because in the Valley of the Kings, there's some massive ones. Or in fact, his wife, stroke sister, his half sister, stroke wife, Hatshepsut, she's got a giant complex. In fact, Samson, can you find the images? Would have put some Hatshepsut images of her thing. So anyway. It's still a relatively minor pharaoh in the scheme of things. Here's just some. Look, if you go back one. That's one of the things they found there, sort of basically saying that this is Thutmose II.
Okay.
So it's not a great
weird
deal.
disc thing. Okay.
It's not a great deal, but
right.
Still, yeah. I think that there's, yeah. So far from being filled with golden things like Tutankhamun,
Yes.
King Tut.
Do you think
I still hope that one day we'll find another Tutankhamun style thing where there's loads of real treasure.
Can you work it out by process of elimination of like these are the ones that are accounted for, and look, here's a really
there you
rich
go. That's
important
Hatshepsut stuff. Sorry, there you go. Look.
Right, that's a bit epic, isn't it?
Yeah, yeah.
Well, his sister, so he was the king, and he got that little grotto.
Yeah.
And his sister gets that.
Yeah, well, his sister, who also wife, and she went on to rule in her own right as something like a female pharaoh. So
that's much better.
Yeah. It's incredible. It's one of the most. That's like something out of a movie, isn't it? It's like something you can scarcely believe.
Back in the day, that must have been epic.
Yeah.
So you can tell that Thutmose was a very practical man, where his sister was like, no.
Well, with a lot of these things, if you didn't rule for a long time, because what usually happened when you died, they just stopped working on the things they were going to do for your burial. So if you only ruled for 4 years, they just haven't got time to build you something grandiose. If you ruled for 40 years, they're working on it for 40 years, say.
Yes.
So that's why...
You must have to start out with a plan in mind. It's not like every year you put an extra year's worth of work in it and you end up with that. I mean, you have to start out with that in mind.
Well, yeah. That's what I think. One of the things because I'm obviously a history nerd, I've of course been fascinated with Egyptian history ever since I was a child. When I was a small child, I wanted to be an Egyptologist.
Right.
I still sort of had that dream when I'd
You could have
started
been
my
Andrew
undergrad.
Jackson then. Yeah.
When I started my undergrad, I still sort of was interested in that.
Yeah.
And one of the things I'm fascinated in is just the so-called pavement at Giza, where the
Pavement?
where the Great Pyramids are built.
Yeah.
Right, you have to do all the groundwork first. Right, you can't just start building a giant pyramid on sand
No.
or even on any sort of ground which isn't perfect for it.
Yes.
Because there's a couple of different pyramids that are
Oh yeah, it must have been a
half
bitch
slumped
to
and
get a
collapsed
site that big
because-
flat and properly drainaged and
So the ground that the Great Pyramid is built on, they call it the pavement.
right.
That itself is a giant engineering project with massive stones, giant thing just to get the foundations
And was
in
that
place.
was that done in one bloke's lifetime?
They say it was, yeah. That's the official narrative.
It's a big project.
A lot of modern scholars, skeptics say.
So the thing I was going to ask
But-
is,
I don't know.
we
No one knows.
you must presumably know who the big wigs were, like who the various kings were. So are there any like proper serious kings who are unaccounted for, and therefore we think we might be able to find a big stash of loot and a nice tomb?
Yeah,
one
there's
day?
some. Yeah.
Right.
One thing to say about that is the king lists are sort of hotly debated by historians and scholars.
Oh, okay.
Whether they're real. At what point does it descend into legend and they're fictional?
Right.
And also over the centuries or millennia, different political factions have come and gone, and it seems almost certainly tried to distort what came before
Oh, I see.
and stuff. So it's
I can
you'll
believe that.
find some Egyptologists who say, no, we've got everything down, we know pretty much the exact dates, and there's no gaps.
Yeah, they would say
And
that, wouldn't they?
right, and others that say, no, come on, the reality is that we can't be certain about this or that.
Right.
So
Okay.
I'm personally probably more in that camp, a little bit skeptical about
Fair enough.
things.
Yeah. Yeah, but that's nice too.
But yeah, it's on my bucket list to go to Egypt. I've travelled all over the place, but I've never been to Egypt, and it is now top of my bucket list to go there. And I'd want to go to the Valley of the Kings, the Valley of the Queens, and see things like that with my own eyeballs. Absolutely want to. If we keep going through a few images, if you, can I do it? Let's go. Oh yeah, so
What's that then?
a place called Saqqara. So the obvious thing is to go to the Giza plateau in Cairo, just outside Cairo, and see the Great Pyramid. I'm fascinated by the Great Pyramid, but there's other things. At Saqqara, there's the Serapeum, where there's these giant enigmatic boxes.
They're not coffins.
Well, we don't know. No mummies were ever found in them, ever.
Can't they open one and find out?
Well, no, they have been opened,
Okay.
and they're empty.
Right.
It seems like they've always been empty. Some say they were supposed to, at one point, hold sacrificial bulls, the Apis bulls, but there's no evidence of that. There's certainly no real evidence that they ever held, like, the bodies of pharaohs or anything like that. And they're giant, and also sort of the precision engineering of them is sort of off the scale, because that's super hard stone, a super hard type of stone, and they're not really sure how that was done in ancient times with the tools that they were supposed to have had at their disposal to do it. Look, like it really is precision engineered.
Oh yeah.
And I mean, there's lots of channels. I'm a big fan of Uncharted X. The History of Granite. There's a great channel called History of Granite. Curtis Ryan Woodside. Graham Hancock is great.
Yeah.
And these guys just put forward often, or they just pose difficult questions. Like, how was that supposed to have been
Exactly. I mean,
made?
if you got somebody to come around and do you an extension or your kitchen, and you could put a set square to any part of it and it lined up like that, you'd be well impressed.
Yeah.
But to do it in ancient times in granite with hand tools, that is quite.
So with diorite pounding stone.
I went to Sri Lanka once.
Doesn't make sense.
And there's this couple of big temples in this bit that I passed through. One was this big blingy temple, loads of gold and stuff like that, and that's the one where everyone went. And I thought, oh yeah, this is reasonably impressive. And then there was another temple that I went to that nobody ever goes to, and it was far more impressive because it was much more humble, but it was carved out of solid granite. So a whole temple carved out of granite, like the inside and everything. It was way more impressive. The amount of work they must have taken to do that.
I went to Angkor Wat once in Cambodia, and there's two main temples there that everyone goes to.
Yes.
They're the first ones you come to, and on the face of it, they're the most impressive. But actually, in that area, there's loads, a dozen or more. And I would advise if you end up in Cambodia and you visit Angkor Wat, make the time to go to some of the other ones.
Yeah. Unfortunately, I didn't do that, but I should do, yeah.
So yeah, how granite was precision engineered apparently with diorite pounding stones is just not really clear. There's a scale of it. And you can see the small area that it's been put into. How did they even move it into that area? Like, we're not sure.
Even if you had 100 strong chaps.
There's not enough room to do it.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Because they get in their way.
Yeah.
How did you move that?
There's always some people, you'll find some fedora tippers in the comments always saying, oh, well, they just understand it. And it may be true, that they just understood leverage really, really well, how to lever and walk things along delicately. But still kind of beggars belief. There's even one that was left abandoned in a hallway there that hadn't been finished and obviously hadn't been put in place. And it's just left there. Again, quite enigmatically. What's that like? What's going on there? Also, the Valley Temple, sometimes known as the Asarion. There's loads of things that I would like to see. There's sort of megalithic size stonework.
Yes.
Right? It's on a scale even bigger than Stonehenge. And,
Stonehenge.
And the engineering is much more impressive and precise.
Yes.
And that's right. That's on the Giza plateau. That's right near the pyramids and the Sphinx. Again, how did they do that deep in antiquity? Again, there will be some people who say it's not that difficult. They had loads and loads of time and sort of endless energy. But still, it's the precision which is the wonder. I could spend weeks or months in Egypt easily. And I've got one picture where it shows the scale of, like, look at the size of that block at the top.
That is ridiculous.
If you see on the left-hand side of it, that little niche that's been cut out of it and things. Like that gives you an idea, I think, of the scale of some of these things. There's sort of endless things to see in Egypt. One of the things I'm fascinated by is the so-called unfinished pyramid, just off the Giza plateau. There's this basically just a big hole in the ground, which many people say it was the beginnings of going to be a big pyramid. Yeah, it was going to be a pyramid, but then the pharaoh died before they got anywhere near actually building the pyramid structure on top of it.
Why didn't the next one just say, okay, carry on, but make it for me?
Not a bad question, but they say maybe it's to do with pride. You want your own project from the beginning. But you can see it's like a massive slope down. I think that picture's actually taken from when they used it as a movie set. You can't go there now these days, this particular site. The Egyptian army says you're not just tourists just aren't allowed there, but they did a film there at some point in the past. You can see where, because under the Great Pyramid, there's sort of a subterranean a subterranean passage and then a subterranean chamber.
Right. The
subterranean chamber in the Great Pyramid is one of the most fascinating things for me.
I didn't even know there was one.
Yeah, but it looks like maybe this was going to be something like that, and they never actually finished it. And down there's like this, at the bottom of it, there was this pavement, this sort of perfect floor, which they dug up. This is back in the 19th century when Western archaeologists would just dig stuff up like this.
Just get stuff done back then.
Yeah. And under the floor, they found a weird sort of oval bathtub type thing, which again was empty, with the lid on it. You can see the lid there with the niches on the side, but it was empty. So yeah, again, just mystery piled upon mystery.
But if only they had a habit of labelling things, it would have been so helpful.
Yeah. It's like just a lost world, isn't it? A lost culture.
I've not seen a lot of these images before. I mean, this place really has scale, even in the ancillary bits.
It's giant engineering projects. Right. Yeah.
And this is basically for just like a nation of river people, because like the whole Egyptian thing was basically just 5 miles either side of the Nile River,
Sort of.
like 800 miles long, 5 miles wide, just a bunch of river folk who made this stuff.
I mean, that particular one's cut into the bedrock. People used to think, oh, they just had tens of thousands, maybe hundreds of thousands of slaves, but now they think almost certainly no, they were more like an artisan class, or more like a professional builder class that just worked in the off-season. When they weren't working the fields, they would be working for the pharaoh's building projects.
I mean, that in
but
itself,
either way, it's a vast amount of human labour.
that in itself is quite impressive, because you've got to produce such a huge surplus from everything else that you're doing to support however many thousands of artisans or whatever it was to do nothing but tinker away at granite all day long.
If nothing else, it infers quite a sophisticated society.
Yes.
Otherwise, you just wouldn't be able to do it.
Oh yeah, we wouldn't be able to do this today. No, not a chance. Yeah. Not from a lack of engineering know-how or anything. It's just organisational people skills. We don't have it.
If we didn't have any modern diggers and stuff.
Even if we had them. Do you think the UK government could organise something like that? They can't organise a rail system.
I see what you're saying. Because we had this, history nerds love to discuss that exact question. Yeah. And some say, yeah, it's right. Like, look how long it takes to build a railway or something, or a new bridge. And then others will say, no, if there was a political will and the money was there, we'd get it done in a month flat.
Yeah, but that is our problem. We don't have the political will to do anything apart from destroy ourselves slowly.
If there was the political will and the investment, we would definitely be able to do stuff like this. But you're right, there isn't.
Well, yeah, but that's a bit like saying if aliens turned up.
Or look at something like the Burj Dubai, the Burj Khalifa, the tallest building in the world.
Yeah, that's not a Western democracy, though, is it?
I know, but yeah. Could the modern Egyptian government do stuff like this, get it done in 1 year or 5 years? Or
I think if Elon became king of Dubai, he might be able to get it done. But I
do like to think this is it's an insight into my psyche. I do like to think if I had $200 billion, like Elon Musk, I might commission my own pyramid.
Oh yeah, So to be fair, right, if there was a big solar event and we all got wiped out and the cockroaches formed a society like 1 million years later, the only things left would be things that you made out of stone. So you might have a little bit of Mount Rushmore left, and maybe the pyramids would still be a bit left. If you want to build something that lasts, do it in stone and do it at scale. Yeah. So if I was a billionaire, I'd 100% be commissioning something massive out of stone.
And do it somewhere in the world where it's not going to fall down through earthquakes or get subsumed by the sea or anything like that.
No earthquakes, not humid, just dry and stable.
Yeah.
Yep.
Yeah, either my own pyramid or a colossus, a giant statue in my own image.
Yeah, that might fall down though.
Okay, just in low relief on the side of a cliff, like Mount Rushmore style.
Yeah.
Okay. High relief, actually. Make that high relief.
Yes.
Yeah. And I'm buried in the head of it.
I'm with you. Yes. I'm with you on that.
Okay. Yes. There's just some more pictures. Islander. Oh, are we going back to the beginning of things? Am I going back?
Yeah, you've gone back to the beginning now.
Okay. Let's go forward.
I think you got them.
Oh, I've gone through them.
You got them
all right. So I thought I'd had loads more images of other things as well. Fairly simple, the unfinished period. Okay, fair enough. But there are so many things to mention about Egypt I'd like to see. There's a very small stone circle at Nabta Playa, which Graham Hancock talks about, which is not that impressive compared to some of the grand building projects, but it's really it's older than the Old Kingdom. I'd like to see that. There's the temple complex at Karnak. There's the Step Pyramid, the Colossi of Memnon, the Red Pyramid, the Bent Pyramid, Menkare's Pyramid. You know, there's the 3 big pyramids on the Giza plateau.
Yes, I know those.
The smallest one of the 3. I'm fascinated just by that alone, Menkare's Pyramid. Yeah. Just that. I've got to go to Egypt soon. I've got to get that done. But okay, the point is there's been some new developments in Egypt. Yep. Did you hear recently, or a year or so ago, they did some sort of geophys or some sort of advanced techniques, and they realised that there's some sort of void above the Grand Gallery in the Great Pyramid. There may be another big...
I heard something about that.
There may be some sort of... Well, there probably is a big chamber above the Grand Gallery in the Great Pyramid.
They need to get their drill out.
And they haven't...
Done it.
The Egyptian authorities are sort of not... They don't seem particularly interested in finding out what's there.
Right.
I'd light a fire under it if it was me. Get it done.
Yeah.
Oh look, big void. They're able to sort of penetrate it with not radar, but something or other, which suggests there's a big void there. Could be filled with golden things. Could be filled with treasures.
Yeah, you want to get on that?
Yeah. But yeah, the Egyptian authorities of antiquities are very. It's difficult to explain why they're very, very conservative with this stuff. Yeah. Why the rest of the world don't pile tons of pressure on them constantly to get it done, but they just don't. Or why underneath, for example, underneath the Giza plateau, it seems to be riddled with a maze, a labyrinth of underground tunnels and things, aquifers and stuff, and it's not really been explored, or not formally. It's not really been properly explored or stuff. If it was up to me,
yes,
I'd get all the best archaeological departments from universities all around the world, some massive project to get it all mapped, get it all done. Anything new that comes out, a suggestion of a hidden chamber behind something or other, look into it right away.
Maybe they're waiting for tiny AI controlled robots or something.
Maybe. Well, there's the so-called the shafts or air vents that poke out from the Great Pyramids.
Yeah.
Have you ever seen they put a little robot up there to find out what's up there? And it's sort of a bit of a dead end, but there's like there's some odd stuff going on there which hasn't been completely explained or explored.
You want a little robot with a drill.
Yeah.
Yeah.
If you would like to watch the full uncut version that is also uncensored, head on over to lotuseaters.com to find out more.